summit pushed Trump critics over the edge in their disdain for the president's behavior.
Slobbering servility, supine puppy.
And such disdain has triggered a counterattack.
Trump derangement syndrome has officially come to the Senate.
Well, actually, it's been everywhere else.
Full-blown Trump derangement syndrome?
Trump derangement syndrome has become a thing.
Now, I've never heard of Trump derangement syndrome. I'm not a doctor, but...
You don't need a degree in psychiatry to make the diagnosis.
Trump derangement syndrome. Hatred of Donald Trump so intense that it impairs people's judgment.
The president himself is citing TDS. On The View, Judge Jeanine Pirro pointed at Whoopi, saying she had it.
Did you just point at me?
Yes!
Listen, I don't have Trump derangement. You know what's horrible? When the president of the United States whips up people.
It took a commercial break to calm her down.
I very rarely lose my cool, but I also don't like being accused of being hysterical.
TDS is nothing new. 15 years ago, someone coined the term Bush derangement syndrome, which was followed by Obama derangement syndrome. And now...
She's got a little bit of that Trump derangement syndrome. I'm hoping that one of these comedians will come up with a anti-anxiety medication for these liberals and just take one tablet a day, maybe a suppository, and take it easy.
But who needs a suppository when Jimmy Kimmel has a cure?
Do you feel like the world is out to get you? You may be suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. Ask your doctor about Resign. Resign, and get you back to living the life you used to love.
Maybe critics have to resign themselves to feeling deranged. Jeannie Mose.
This is called Obama derangement syndrome.
CNN.
Suffer from what we affectionately call Bush derangement syndrome.
Trump derangement syndrome.
Make yourself great again. Resign.
New York.
Hey there, guys. Welcome to the channel. So, guys, it's happening. The left is becoming more and more unhinged. They're becoming crazier and crazier each day. And for some of them, it's happening even faster than advertised. And that is where the good stuff is. When leftists say something so insane that they have to get checked on their own TV programs, that is where the good stuff is. In the most recent show I got to show you is George Conway, who we all know he's always good for a few. But this one's all about the 14th Amendment decision in Colorado. And the funny thing is, when it originally happened, Conway, he had a pretty smart position. His position was that it was wrong to remove anyone from a ballot and that voters should have the ultimate decision. What a freaking crazy person. He even thought that was too extreme for Trump. Well, that did not help his grift, because we all know that's what he is. The man is a grifter. So now he's singing the opposite tune, and he's talking about how correct and how justified Colorado is. And guys, all this man is a con man. It's funny, the people who talk the loudest about Trump being a con man, of course, are the worst con men. The guy is a slimy, sleazy, leftist lawyer con man who will say anything for a buck. And it's nuts. He chose the wrong place to do it, because he was on CNN, right, with Ellie Honig, who I show a lot. And I show him a lot because the guy is sharp. He remains the last CNN personality with any real backbone and probably any real IQ, you know. And you guys got to see him. He's going to school grifter George Conway. But first, if you haven't already, guys, help the channel continue to grow. Moving into 2024, you've heard me say it, it's going to be more and more difficult to get conservative voices heard. So, guys, we're going to have to do this work together. So like, comment, subscribe, most importantly, share the channel. And take a look at this.
Yeah, I approach this whole issue with trepidation because it is a big deal to throw a former president off the ballot. But I was convinced very much by the original law review article written by the conservative law professors. I said, wow, this is a much stronger argument than I thought. But I still felt that courts were going to try to look for a way out, and that somehow, you know, some genius legal lawyer or law professor would come out with a response. And when I saw the Colorado case, I didn't see one. I didn't see a federal argument against what the Colorado Supreme Court did. And all the arguments that I have seen against disqualification are bogus, like the one with, my friend Ellie just mentioned. He suggests that the only way that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment could be enforced is through an act of Congress. That's just not true. There's nothing in Section 3 that says that. There's nothing that says that in the other provisions of the 14th Amendment. And if it were true, that would mean that if Congress repealed tomorrow all of the civil rights acts that were enacted enacted from the time of the Civil War through the 60s to the present, that would mean under Section 1, that Section 1, which prohibits race discrimination, that would mean that the states could immediately start resegregating their schools and there would be no way to enforce it. That's just not the law. And there's nothing in the 14th Amendment that says that Section 3 is any different than Section 1 in that score. So that argument just goes out the door. All the other arguments that I've seen that have been raised, like the argument that the president is not an officer, is just, that one is silly because the Constitution refers to the presidency as an office dozens of times. So, I mean, really, the arguments are pathetically weak, and unless somebody comes up with something better, the Supreme Court's going to have a very difficult time avoiding the consequence of the plain language of the 14th Amendment.
Ellie? I agree with original George here, where he started off. There is language on this specifically in the 14th Amendment. Everyone's talking about Section 3, which is very important. It says if an officer engages in insurrection or gives comfort to enemies of the country, he's disqualified. Great. But Section 5 is two sections ahead that says Congress shall have the power to pass legislation to enact this amendment. So has Congress done that? No, it doesn't say Congress shall have the power. Or states can if they feel like it.
That's nonsense. Ellie, that's just complete nonsense.
It's the language of Section 5. I think we have Section 5. We'll call it up. What's your response to that? Section 5 is clear. It says Congress has the power.
What you just said, it does have the power, but it does not say, what it does not say is that the amendment is not self-executing. And that's the point I was making with Section 1, Ellie. What it means is that if Section 3 says somebody who's engaged in an insurrection is not eligible if they've already taken an oath, then that's what it means. You don't need Congress to tell you to follow the Constitution, no more than you need Congress to tell you to follow the Section 1's prohibition in the 14th Amendment that says that you can't put black kids in a different school.
I'm not following that analogy
just not that hard,
whatsoever.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Congress shall have the power. This self-executing point.
Congress says that provision, Ellie, you know better. You've read the provision. That provision applies to Section 1 as well. Your logic would mean that that states could engage in race discrimination tomorrow if all the civil rights statutes were gone. It's just nonsense, Ellie.
Not at all. That's not what it means. It says Congress shall have the power. You're trying to add in states.
It's nonsense, Ellie. It's not an argument. It's not a serious argument, Ellie. I'm sorry. It's not a serious argument.
I mean, you're speaking in conclusory terms. You're not addressing the actual issue. Let me make this point about the self-executing point.
Elliot, I made a complete argument that Section 3 is parallel to Section 1. That's what we do as lawyers. We don't say that a provision that's like Section 5 that says that Congress has the power. That does not mean that a provision of the Constitution is not enforceable unless Congress says so. That's nonsense. Okay. If the framers of the 14th Amendment had meant to say that, they could have said that in words of one syllable. Instead, they said in Section 3 that somebody who engages in an oath to the Constitution, to support the Constitution, then engages in insurrection, which isn't really a hard requirement for somebody to meet, not engaging in insurrection, they're barred. And it says that without regard. It doesn't say unless Congress does something in Section 5. It doesn't say that. And I'm a conservative. I was a member of the Federalist Society. This is how we read plain text. We don't make stuff up just because we don't like the result.
This is not textualism. This is pretzel logic. I agree with you. Let's take it as a given that Donald Trump... George, you have to let me talk at some point, George. Come on, you're filibustering.
Okay.
Let's
let Ellie make his point, and then I got a question for you, George.
Let's take it as a given that Donald Trump engaged in insurrection. The amendment itself is clear. You want to talk text? Section 5 is clear as can be. Congress has the power. What you're trying to do is read into it, and so do the states. Let me also make this...
You're misreading Section 5. The text says Congress has the power.
We'll put it up again.
It doesn't say that... Okay, it says Congress has the power. It doesn't say that Section 3 doesn't stand alone. It just doesn't.
George,
you're just,
you have to give me a second here, George.
Okay,
the self-executing point is when you keep going.
Ellie, you're just not making any sense.
Okay,
George, listen.
Can we?
I'm sorry.
For the viewers at home who are wondering, I mean, at the heart of this, and I think this is important, George, because what you were writing, what I referenced earlier, is that you formerly were skeptical of the idea that this is something that could bar Trump from the ballot. But what about the argument here that we've heard even from people who, and I should note that you are certainly not a fan of Donald Trump's. But what about the argument that for a court to make this decision, not the voters, that it's undemocratic, that they should make the decision of who's on the ballot instead of just simply the voters deciding who should be on the ballot for something of this matter?
That doesn't work either, because the provision we're talking about, Section 14A3, was approved by Congress and by the states. And there are other provisions in the Constitution, like the requirement that the president be 35 years old, that he be a natural born or she be a natural born citizen. Those too restrict the ability of people to vote for whoever they want. And the democratic way to overturn those requirements, including the requirement, which is, again, as I say, is a really easy one, don't engage in an insurrection, don't try to overthrow the government. The way to overturn that requirement or modify it is the democratic process of proposing and the Congress adopting and then the state legislatures approving another constitutional amendment that undoes Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, at least as far as it affects Trump. I don't know.
Yeah, so you guys see that, man. What can you say? Ellie Honig, the dude is sharp. And George Conway, he is absolutely not. The guy, he sounds like he knows what he's talking about, but if you get past his words, if you get past his vernacular, the guy does not have a clue. He never explains why he believes what he believes about the Constitution. He just says that it is. It is because I say it is. That's just not good enough. And of course, as usual, in all of his insurrection arguments, he never admits that not even the federal government itself believes that an actual insurrection took place. No one's been charged. It doesn't. The verbiage does not show up in any government document anywhere, except for the Congress garbage, which makes his entire argument irrelevant. And he does it all while claiming to be a conservative. That was news to me when I watched this clip. I never knew that guy considered himself a conservative. But, who does he think he's fooling? I love Ellie's line, this is not originalism, this is pretzel logic. And he's exactly right. That is exactly what that was. That was pretzel logic. But anyway, I feel like I have lost time when I listen to George Conway. And now I really, truly do feel guilty making you guys watch that as well. But misery loves company, and that's the way it works. Guys, that's all I got. I hope you did enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't already, please help us grow. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. We'll see you in the next one.